Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're back on the Mitchell product line. I had a request for this one, so that's why we're doing it. It just recently came into my shop. This is the Garcia Mitchell 320. It's a smaller format reel than the 300, but not by much. And this one, the guy told me he picked it up at a garage sale, and the first thing I noticed was that the drag isn't holding. So we'll go underneath there and find out what's going on with that. Other than that, he said take it apart, clean it up, and bring it back to me. So that's what we will do. Everything else seems to be functioning. The bail seems to be doing okay. The crank shaft and everything going up and down is fine. And the anti-reverse and anti-reverse override is working. So I think he said he paid under $10 for it, so that's probably about fair. This one was made in France. And let's take it apart and show you what's inside it and tune it up for him while we're at it. Since he has a problem with the drag washer, let's take a look and see what's going on there. Well, there's an obvious problem there. There is no drag washer. So here's a little trick. Let's see if it holds. I don't have the drag washer for this one, but I have accumulated over the years a whole bunch of spools and things from broken reels and the like. And I generally take the drag washers out of them and put them aside just for such an occasion. So let's just grab one of these. This one looks like it might fit. And put that on. If we can, yep, there you go. It's over the hole. That's fine. Let's put the spool back on for a moment here. And if this works, the lesson is that there's some parts of reels are interchangeable. I have no idea what that reel was. I know it was a spinning reel, but other than that, no clue. And sometimes that's all you need. Let's tighten this down. There you go. We have a drag washer that holds. Problem one solved. All right, we'll take this off anyway because I want to show you what else is under this reel here. This has a little bit of a different approach on the bail than the traditional 300. The bail on this one kind of fits in a slot here as opposed to the open slot. Kind of the same idea though. It'll have a click mechanism that'll come out and it'll trip when it hits the high spot inside. The rest of this seems to be pretty straightforward. So let's go underneath, show you what's going on there, and we'll proceed to tune this one up. I'm just going to take these drag washers and the like, put them out of the way, since those are no longer needed. And that saves a trip to the parts providers out there, usually on eBay or something at this point, for the older Mitchell reels. But this has got a one screw take apart, much like many of the Mitchell reels. It has a side plate that comes down. And I guess for the most part we're seeing what we were feeling. There's enough grease in there that it's holding, and it hasn't seized. It has coagulated to one side, so my guess is this fishing reel hasn't been out fishing in a while. That's what typically happens when you lay a reel down. You just get everything will kind of float to the bottom. Gravity will kind of do its work. So we'll just go ahead and clean that up a little bit. You'll notice a couple of things while we're working on the reel. I do have a protective glove on my my non-dominant hand. I happen to be right-handed, and if I could find a glove that worked and let me work while I'm at it, that would be wonderful. Right now I just haven't had that luck, and so I keep my working hand without the glove. The rest of it I try and keep chemicals off, and from time to time you'll see me use that as a tool as well. There's a pin holding in the axle shaft. It rides on the stud on the main gear to drive this up and down. You'll see as I turn it. And once you remove that pin, you can remove the axle shaft, which is good because this is covered in grease. I'm going to take a piece of steel wool and just clean up some of that old grease. Once I do that, we can come over then, remove that crosswind block. I'll use my gloved hand because there's a lot of junk on that. Just going to use a paper towel to wipe off what I can. And you'll see underneath now the main gear and that little stud that the crosswind block rides on. There's a groove in the crosswind block here. And of note, Take pictures along the way because it could get confusing when you go to reinstall and you don't want to do this the wrong way. That pin that went through the hole and held the axle shaft on was on the top of the block. The reason why I note that, it's real easy to just put that crossline block in upside down, and if you do, that pin is going to bump against the bottom here and your reel will not be working properly. Let's see if I can get the handle off. Probably should have done that before I removed the others. Well, we still have the rotor on up here, so we're okay with that. Handle is off. I'm going to use my Mitchell tool here, but if you don't have a Mitchell tool, it's a 12mm socket. Mitchell happened to have made this one. You can still find them on eBay and the like. They tend to run about $10. And you'll see that there's a little hold fast pin, and you'll see the trip mechanism underneath. And we can push this hole, well, we can push down so we get that pin out of there. Well, I'm saying pin, it's a washer. Just be patient when you're doing this. You want to make sure that you don't pry anything or unnecessarily upset something to break. There we go. Just takes a little bit of time. There's a groove in that pin. Notice that. So when you go to put the slot back on, there's a little piece that sticks out there that rides in the slot. And then once you do that, you should be able to push the pinion gear through. And all we're really doing at this point belongs on the pinion gear underneath it. And take pictures along the way in case something like that happens where you're unsure of where that goes. You'll be able to go back to your pictures and figure it out. Push your main gear out. We're stuck in here. Don't go pounding anything. I have this little thing that I use for centering. It's an old carpenter's awl, and that's fine. You'll see how the anti-reverse runs. I only point that out because sometimes these things pop off. If you do, you've got a little tag that runs under the bump in the side case, followed by kind of a question mark long metal stick, and then onto the anti-reverse trip lever. We're going to do the same thing here that we did with the other stuff. We're going to go give it a cleaning. This has been years. We know that because of the way that grease settled inside the case. So just use a steel wall pad. This is 4-0 steel wall. Use some cotton swabs, which we're doing here, to get the accumulated grease off. That old grease has turned brown and lost its slip and slide functional capabilities. One step below drying out completely. So just make sure it's nice and clean. And we can go ahead and just re-lube this. This is a relatively simple reel to take apart and put back together. But the engineering is held over time. Not as sturdy a reel as the Mitchell 300, which has a lot more going for it with the engineering behind it, but not priced like a Mitchell 300 either. Okay, so we did what we need to do there. We'll get a little bit of blue grease. I'm using a Penn Precision reel grease. You don't have to use Mitchell grease. There are some purists out there who are restoring the Mitchell reels. They have that amber grease in them, and they make sure that they use that. I'm just trying to get the reels fishing again. So not that any old grease will do. Keep the grease as a fishing reel grease, but once you do that, you should be fine. Okay, I'm gonna go grab the pinion gear now. I'm gonna check to make sure all the teeth are okay and not damaged. Look at it visually from two ways. Look at it this way as well as this way. These are fine. Put a little bit of grease onto the shaft, and then we can reinstall your gear. piece goes on the top of the gear. And we have that little piece with the stud that rides in the channel. Excuse me. Hold it. There's no channel, it just holds it. Then we can go ahead and check it's clean underneath. This is the trip lever. You can always put a little bit of grease on the trip lever. You'll see it as I just took the metal piece off of that. That's what swings back and forth. A little bit of oil is fine. I said grease before, that's an error. You don't want to grease these things. Grease will trap dirt and cause you a problem later on. I'm going to go ahead and put that back on now. There's some dirt on the tie-down mechanism. This is just a shield that's covering the spring. It doesn't have the it doesn't have a purpose other than covering the spring there. So it just sits on top. I'm going to go ahead and grab the rotor nut to tie it down then. Grab that little tool. It's the 12mm socket. So if you don't have this tool, no problem. Use an open or closed face wrench. Use a deep socket from an automotive set. Any of those will do fine. Here's our crosswind block now. We're just going back on reassembly. We're going to put some blue grease into the channel and on the face of it. Don't overload it because the little stud that's going to move that up and down won't have full range of motion if you do overload. I go ahead and grab the steel wool again. We did it once before. We'll do it again. And we'll grab a little bit of the blue grease there. And this is where I use my glove hand as a tool. You can put a lot on there, but you don't want a lot on there when you go to reinstall it, because what will happen with that is it'll just catch itself up top here on the nut. The tolerances are too close, and with those tolerances what will happen is that the grease just won't go through it. Alright, you can see that there's not a lot of room on the throw there. If you had reversed this down and tried to push for that pinhole, you wouldn't find it. What I've done is I aligned the hole. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the handle back on. And just make sure that we've got full range of motion there, which we do, which is working fine. We could actually put a little bit of grease into the channel here. I'm hearing a little bit of noise there, so let's go ahead and just, it'll work its way around, but just to be safe. Okay, and we can just clean the rest of this off the side case then. And then we can reinstall the side case with the single screw. Now I imagine if you were fishing heavy duty fish with this lighter reel, that you might want to go and get the reel drag for this as opposed to just using a substitute like I did. This isn't heavy duty. I imagine it could be. I don't know. I mean, it came out of another spool, so I imagine it has the right characteristics of the drag washer. But if you wanted to be a purist about it, you could go back and get one of these drag washers for the reel, probably off of eBay or some secondary seller. And we'll just put the spool back on right now. So it's nothing fancy, but it's a solid reel that, reels in general. One big gear drives a small gear, makes the reel turn around, and then one way or another, in this case a pin and a cross block, right off the main gear, push the spool shaft or axle shaft up and down. Alright, we're full on that. So all I'm going to do then is I'm going to just put a little bit of oil on the side, both sides. This is just a stud on this side. There's nothing going on. And the only thing in here is a spring, so you don't have to take the bail apart. But that's just to kind of flush out the if there's any kind of impurities or debris or anything that may have caught up inside there. That's what that's about. So that's it. That's the Mitchell 320. It very much similar in nature, a little bit different form factor. But if you're looking at the 304, the little round one, very similar in nature. We'll do a 304. I have a request, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But this one is the Mitchell 320. It's a nice little reel, and it's ready to go fishing again. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it and subscribe if you want to see more. And this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing you great fishing.